It is really scary that 52 American soldiers facing over 400 Talibans.
They're not going to let us out of here. They're trying to kill everybody today, and they brought the people to do it.
These Taliban fighters did not look like an average fighters.
They brought their best.
I started taking grenades, and I was throwing them over to Esco. You go to a football stadium, and we were the players on the field that day, and the entire stadium was filled with fans, except the fans had guns and rockets. Wow. That's exactly how it was.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Black Side Show. Today we do episode 13. Here we are.
Here we go.
Today is a very special podcast. I'm bringing a friend of mine that I really respect highly. I'm bringing Sgt Rasmussen, who actually was in COP Keating in 2009. This is a very known firefight that went down between hundreds of Talibans versus not a lot of our guys. This was a crazy firefight, probably one of the craziest firefight of the Afghan war. This story is extremely incredible, and so many of our men rose above the line of a duty. There was 2 Medal of Honors that were issued in this firefight, plenty of Purple Heart, Bronze Stars, and today I'll bring Thomas to tell his story about what he saw that day.
So Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me,
Black
fellas.
Side Show, bro. Damn, man.
Thanks for having me.
Damn.
Good to see you again.
You make me feel so little.
Well, I think it's the beard.
It's a crazy, man. I've watched movies about this. I watched documentaries. I watched all kind of different things, and truly, this is a crazy. In my opinion, this was a suicide mission in the U.S. side. The location, being in the middle of the valley, facing mountains. I mean, I lost my men in Haifa Street because I was at a low ground. This terrifies me when I see this. Yeah. Me losing my men, I was at low ground. Watching this fight makes my fight looks nothing. Because when you're at low ground, you're done.
So you're saying that the position that they were trying to defend or take back was low ground, and the Taliban had the high ground all around?
Yeah. The Taliban had the high ground. They were coming from up top.
So they definitely had the advantage.
I mean, in combat, when someone is coming at you from a higher ground, they had the better reach.
It's easier to aim down than aim up, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is actually terrifying. It's hard. I mean, when I fought against a sniper in Haifa Street in Baghdad, it was fucking difficult, man. He knocked out 18 of my guys. So that's scary to see, like, what they went through for hours. I mean, to me, this was only 2 hours. To them, this was hours and hours and hours of doing this.
How long was this fight before it was actually finally over?
It was sun up to sundown. It was about 12 hours.
So 12 hours or maybe a little bit longer? Wow.
Jesus Christ.
That's a long time to be taking fire.
Yeah.
All kinds of fire, too. Not just small arms fire, but RPGs and everything else, too, right?
It was the entire arsenal. They busted out everything that they could find laying around. Everything they could bring in.
I'll tell you what, Tom. You'll probably have won the CrossFit Games already.
Dude, put him in there.
Yeah, I'm like 12 hours. You'd be like, I did it in 12 hours. I was being shot at. You know what I mean?
I wish they would have had. Yeah,
he did get
I wish they would have had Apple Watches back then, so I could have had a step count.
Yeah, but the CrossFit medal.
Oh, okay.
The CrossFit medal.
He should take that one.
Yeah, we should.
Does that come with the?
People love to do this working out, right?
Yeah.
And get a medal because, they did this workout with the body armor. I'm like, come do it for 12 hours while someone look like me shoot at you,
Yeah, Tom, that would be incredible if somebody had like a step counter or Apple Watch to see like how long, like how high your heart rate is during one of these firefights and like how many steps you take running back and forth and everything. I bet your heart rate is staying pegged the whole time.
Yeah, I bet you that whole machine would have just melted on your wrist.
Jesus. So, Tom, I want to take you back before we go to Afghanistan. I would like to take you back into your life a little bit of where you grew up and what really made you, and what year and what made you join the military.
Yeah, so I mean, I came from a military family. My dad was Army, and I got to go through the whole experience with him and him going off on different missions. And I never really understood what he did until after he had died and after I joined the military. But he would be gone all the time, and he'd have MREs, at the house, and we thought they were the coolest thing known to man to be snacking on an MRE or something like that. And then, wrestling with dad time was him putting us in submission holds and choking us out and teaching us how to wrestle, military style. You know what I mean? So we grew up that whole lifestyle. So I kind of, I guess, knew deep down inside I was always going to do it.
How did your father die? Did he die in the service?
No, he died pretty young. He died of heart failure, 59. I think
man.
it was in 2013.
Wow. So this was after his military service was over?
Oh, yeah. He'd been long gone and out. So he was out before I joined.
Was he Vietnam era?
No, he was a little bit towards the end of Vietnam, mostly in between everything, just after Desert Storm. So he did aviation. He was a crew chief on birds and worked on birds. And that was back when you can kind of bounce forth into MOSs. And if you weren't getting promoted or there wasn't points left open, then you could just bounce to another MOS real quick and get promoted and go back to your MOS as a sergeant or something like that. So that was the easiest way to do it.
Wow.
So, did you have any siblings?
I did. I had an older brother. Ironically enough, he was killed. It was I don't know the specific day. It was the day of the Fort Hood shooting. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Oh man,
he wasn't killed at Fort Hood.
Early 2000s,
but it was that day,
right?
And it was about a week after actually COP Keating. He got killed in a car accident in Lubbock, Texas. But I have a younger brother. He lives in Minnesota. He's a firefighter. He works for the Ramsey County Sheriff, and I have a little sister. She lives in San Antonio.
What does she do? Because it sounds like you have a family of service.
She doesn't do much. She just kind of sits around and hops job to job.
That's
but
the job of the youngest.
Trying to get back on her feet.
Right?
She kind of had a rough go of it there for a little bit, but she's doing good now.
Good.
So what year did you join the military, Thomas?
Man, I joined in 2003. I left for basic. I think it was January 3rd. It was right after the New Year.
Nice.
And when it really solidified for me to join, as I remember, a lot of guys my generation is 9/11, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember I was in high school and I was in a class called Minnesota Studies, and they just sat us down and turned the TVs on, and I didn't really know about the Twin Towers at that time, but I knew one of them on fire, burning, was a bad deal. And then watching that second plane hit was just crazy, and nobody really knew what was happening. Right. And they kind of canceled school, and we just watched 9/11 on TV all day. And about 2 hours after that second plane hit, in the military, if you're 17, 18 years old and you're still in school, you can join, go to basic training, come back, finish high school, then they send you off to your unit. And there was 2-3 guys in my school that had done that, and about 2.5 hours, something like that, after 9/11 happened, a bunch of guys in military uniforms came and pulled all those kids out of school and said, "Hey, it's time to go." And that's when I was like, "Oh,
this is real.
There's some stuff going down here. This isn't good." So I think I kind of knew then that I was gonna join. You know what I mean? So
nice.
Most of the guys I served with was really 9/11. 9/11 almost brought a whole entire generation from the United States.
Well, it's just something. You see Americans dying, and you see some of the two most iconic pieces of structure in America, burning and melting and falling on the ground. And it's, if you have any kind of patriotism in you, you're going to do something about it.
And it's kind of crazy how 9/11 changed so many people's lives.
Oh yeah.
Not just the people that died in it, and the people that lost loved ones in it. I've served with a Marine that lost his mom in the tower. I get chills when I talk about it, bro.
Yeah.
It's kind of it changed a lot of lives.
Absolutely.
It changed a whole generation, because for me, it's just, I saw you guys come from that tragedy to Iraq. I don't know. It was I've seen 9/11. I have seen different sides of 9/11. I've actually watched people celebrating on the road when 9/11 happened.
Wow.
And I just, that age in my life is like, why are people celebrating other people's death? I don't understand it.
Yep. That's kind of crazy, Hamity.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that yesterday. I've always heard 9/11 from our side, you know what I mean? But I've never, all the times we've hung out, I've never like thought to ask you like what was going on, or do you even remember, 9/11 and what they were doing?
It was a tragic for me. I think I was watching like how people were celebrating.
Yeah, and you were 15 at the time.
Yeah,
right?
and I just went outside and I still remember I have a next door neighbor that was like very radicalized, never missed a prayer at the mosque. And I just looked at him and I said, "What's going on? Like, what are you celebrating for?" And he looked at me and he goes, "Sheikh Osama just destroyed America." And I didn't know what it mean. I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "He just attacked America. He killed plenty of Americans." And that's what he answered me.
Wow.
And I just looked at him and I'm like, why are you celebrating people's death? Like, who did he kill? And I just looked in there and like, it was a disturbing moment, but at the time, this was what normal for me. Mm-hmm. This is what sounds normal, right? Because America was like the mortal enemy.
Yeah.
And they were celebrating. And then when I went to the TV and I saw like people falling from the top of the building, and I just kept looking left and right, like, this is not okay.
I think it would have been different, and Tom, you can tell me if you agree. I think it would have been different if they hit like a military target. But this was a civilian target. Very clearly. There was no military.
It was very disturbing.
Yeah.
Truly, like, if you watched it in a country like mine, in Iraq, and you saw people dancing, and then you're watching the TV screen, and you see someone falling from the top of the building. That's what I saw. Mm-hmm. And it was extremely disturbing.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it was more disturbing for me watching it in Iraq versus watching it in America.
And then if you understand why that person was falling, that person had to make the decision, do I stay here and burn to death, or do I jump to my death? Like, can you imagine having to make that decision?
Yeah. And I just felt like, when they were celebrating, I was like, what does that woman have to do with you?
Yeah.
Like, you live here in the middle of shit because of your people, because of the government that's controlling you, because of the life that you're creating yourself. You are sucking it up to a dictator, and you are celebrating someone's death right across the world you don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's what's disturbing for me.
Yeah, so
you already knew that you wanted to join the Army, Tom?
What's that, buddy?
You already knew that you wanted to join the Army specifically. Why did you choose Army?
So, it's a funny story is I was trying to, I guess, be a defiant teenager. My whole lineage is Army. My dad was Army. My grandparents, all my grandfathers were Army, and they were World War I, World War II. All the wars. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to join the Marines. I'm just trying to be defiant, like, F you. Mm-hmm. I'm joining the Marines. Well, I had a couple of hernia surgeries in high school because of football. So I went to the Marines, and they were like, nah, dude, you're prone to hernias. You can't come. And I was like, what? Like, that's bullshit. I said, I had surgery. They're fixed. You know what I mean? I said, let's go. And they're like, nah, man, go next door to the Army. And I was like, all right, well, fuck you guys. I'm going to the Army. So I went next door to the Army office, and it's kind of funny how it ended up is I joined to be infantry. I said, I know what I want. I want to be infantry. Let's go. I'm ready to leave, tomorrow. And
you haven't heard the Marine Corps motto? It's the few, the proud, the hernia free.
That's
yeah.
So you joined the Army basically in 2003.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So basically, me and you went through the same thing the same year.
Yeah, I think
that's the year I joined the military in 202003. And went in.
Yeah,
and
but you climbed up the ranks a little bit faster than I did.
I know, bro, because everybody was shooting at my butt. That's why.
Yeah.
Because it was like fast 1 year. Everybody, I was like, I was like the porn star that everybody was like masturbating to.
Yeah.
I was being shot at every day.
You're the Ron Jeremy of the Iraqi Army.
I was the Ron Jeremy of the Iraqi Army for sure. And it's kind of crazy to see that we went through this the same year. So you went to Iraq at some point. What year did you deploy to Iraq?
I was deployed to Mosul in 2000 from 2005 to 2006.
Wow.
Yeah, I stayed up there most of the time, and I mean, so I guess backtracking a little bit, I joined to be infantry, and I got to MEPS, and they said infantry's full, and I was like, that doesn't sound right. And they're like, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know. That's all I thought about doing was infantry. And they showed me this video that got me. You know what I mean, with the whole recruiting deal, and they showed me a video of bombs blowing up, people running everywhere and shooting everything, and they're like, you want to do that? And I was like, hell yeah, sign me up. I don't want to do that shit. And they're like, cool, 13 Bravo. And I was like, I had no idea what that was. and artillery, and so I didn't even know what my job was until about halfway through basic training, and I was like, what? I don't want to shoot these big ass cannons. I signed up to shoot people, but yeah, I went over to Iraq in 2005 as an artilleryman. And,
so were you there when they bombed the DFAC? When the DFAC
I got there it was like 3 weeks after they had blown up that DFAC, maybe even shorter than that, but yeah, it was right around that time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was actually,
they hadn't rebuilt it yet. The DFAC was still laying in rubble.
I've been to that DFAC actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a suicide bomber that blew himself up inside of the DFAC.
What is a DFAC? For
like the military chow hall, basically, where you eat. And a suicide bomber got in. Like, they sneaked him into the base and blew himself up inside, killed a lot of people.
Yeah, and it was like prime time eating time, too, if I remember right. He took out a lot of dudes.
A lot of people. It was like eating time. And believe it or not, DFAC is probably the most dangerous. Like the chow hall is the most dangerous place where you most likely will die.
Didn't you tell me that that's why you always waited till the very end of the meal to eat?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I always, so I figured it out because I was at war for 5 years, right? I freaking was living at war. Like, people deploy 12 months, 18 months, whatever, but I'm there the whole time. And I figured out the norm in DFAC attacks. DFAC attacks comes in the first half an hour when the DFAC opened. Mm-hmm. So if lunch was starting at 11 o'clock, that's what they used to do. Between 11 and 11:30, that is the time where they hit mortars, Katyushas, where a lot of things will fly. Anything could happen in that half hour. The DFAC closes about 2 o'clock. You can totally go eat your meal at 1:50.
There you go.
And that's exactly what I was doing every day. Literally, I would watch people run away, get hit, get injured, go to the U.S. Combat Hospital, get treated. After all that shit is over, I'll go get my meal.
Yeah.
And even whatever was left over is probably better than what you grew up eating anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. For me, it's like I didn't give a shit. I was like, all right, I'll just go and get whatever. But I was like, oh, they're gonna be out of steak. I was like, well, it's either they're out of steak, either I'm gonna become steak. So which one? So that's
you
that's
just grab
why.
The honey buns and the Nutrition bars.
Trust me. It was my stories that the DFAC are horror stories. They're not fun stories. Mm. From eating pork for 3 months and I didn't know it was pork, to getting attacked every single day. So I knew the time. I knew what time they were attacking, and it became like normal. So when the new guys get in the country, I always give them the advice. I'm like, okay, look, do not go when the DFAC open. Always go when the DFAC close. Yeah. I was like, or you're gonna end up being in a combat hospital with a grenade, with all this mortar shrapnels in your stomach, and it looks ugly. And they're like, oh yeah, and so that's what I do. In the morning, I skip breakfast because breakfast was dangerous. Yeah, breakfast that was like good morning. They got to a point we had a artillery response system. When the mortars head down towards the base, we had an artillery response system. The U.S. military had that. They'll respond to where the mortar was coming from. So what these fuckers did, they put the mortars on a moving truck.
Oh wow!
So they'll move and hit us with mortars.
So they're probably not as accurate that way, but it's more like harassment fire, right?
Oh yeah,
just keep you on your toes.
Keep you on your toes. I mean, shit, that waffle you will put your life on the line for. I was like, screw that. I'll just enjoy my Iraqi eggs. That was it for me,
Wow.
Yeah, and that's how it was. So you went to Iraq. You spent how many months you were in Iraq, Thomas?
Man, I was there. I think I was there 12, 13 months. Basic deployment down there. It was it was a chill deployment. We were running convoy security for a lot of things, and so it wasn't. And thank God we didn't actually lose anybody. We had some guys injured, IEDs and stuff like that, but we were rolling around mostly at night, running convoys between the green zone up north and the Kurdish territory and down south.
So is there just not a lot of action in Iraq at that point, or was he just not in it?
No, there was a ton. And I was listening to y'all's show the other day about Route Irish, and I got kind
Yeah.
of a funny story about it. Is they sent us down to buy up to pick up some new vehicles because we'd had all ours lost, and the only ones we could get were down there. And they were like, "Hey, go down to Baghdad and pick up these vehicles." And we're like, "Cool, how do we get there?" They're like, "I don't know. Here's at BFTs, the Blue Force trackers were brand new then." And they're like, "Just look on that map. You'll find your way down there." So we spent 2 days driving to Baghdad. Had no idea where we were going or how to get there. And I think we'd stopped at what's that big base? Is it Taji?
Camp Taji. Yeah.
Yeah, but they had a swim. First time we'd seen swimming pools, and they had like PXs and stuff. And I was like, "Dude, what is this? People are living like this. This is crazy."
Yeah.
But that we pulled into Baghdad in the middle of the night. No idea where we were. No idea about Baghdad. Anything. Couldn't even find the airport. Trying to call up to random nets and not get any response. Dude, we were driving around Route Irish for like 2.5 hours. No idea where we were, and nobody even knew that we were there. And nothing happened, and we rolled in the gate and told them where we were coming from. They're like, "Dude, how are you guys alive?" I was like, "I don't know. We just pulled.
You guys are just taking tour through Iraq."
Yeah. I guess everybody was asleep at that time. I don't know.
I remember at the time. What's the system? The GPS system they use on the Humvees. That's all you got.
Yeah,
right?
that was the BFT, the Blue Force Tracker System. I think
that's all you got, and you got maps, and that's how you went through it. I mean, imagine coming from one state to another. And you don't have any of this technology. You had all this big thing, and it's not accurate, and it's just,
The Blue Force tracker, does that show where all the friendlies are?
Not at all.
I think at that time it did. Yeah, if they had another system, you could see them on there, and you could like click on the dot and try to message them real quick. And we just got them, so we didn't really know how to use them.
I think it shows only American bases or FOBs.
Oh,
Like if you went to the Iraqis, you'd be eating all this rice and chicken.
Bread. That bread was pretty good though.
You got nothing. So you Mosul was actually a crazy violent place. It was not.
Dude, it was really hot back then.
Yeah, that was a
there was lots going
tough
on.
year. Very tough year.
I think the Stryker Brigade was up there that year, and they were up there. I think they were the main effort up there, and they had a rough deployment.
Yeah, I've been to Mosul during that year actually. Mm-hmm. And I've seen the Stryker brigades. I've seen all that patrolling. The patrolling was insane. Yeah. Mosul was like one of the most violent places beside the Anbar province in Iraq.
Yeah.
And that's what became ISIS territory recently in 2014. So so you leave Iraq, you come back, and now we want to go into Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And this is insane. So I'm sure you've seen Iraq. You've seen everything about Iraq. So what year did you, after 2006, you come back, you go home, and then you deploy again to Afghanistan in 2009?
Yeah, I came home and I reclassed to a scout and got stationed in Fort Carson, Colorado, and they were already on orders for Afghanistan. And the brigade I got sent to, they had this crazy rule that if you just came back from deployment, they weren't going to send you to a line unit. You're attached to headquarters. So they'd put me in what's called the S3 shop, which, I mean, you're just sitting around with a bunch of, sergeant first classes and majors, and they assigned me as the colonel's driver, which, I mean, my personality and all that, I'm not so much of a yes man. You know what I mean? I didn't follow rules very well. So that, I mean, the whole train up going to Afghanistan, I was driving the colonel around, and I remember the sergeant major would come in every morning. I'd call it ease, and as soon as I call it ease, he walked by me every morning for 4 or 5 months. I'd be like, "Sergeant Major, can I go to the line yet?" And he'd go, "Not today, not today, not today." And he'd get annoyed with it, and then finally one day he was like, "Yep, go report to Bravo Troop 361." And I was like, "Oh God!" And I'd watched all these guys train, and Bravo Troop had a, I guess, stigma to it in the squadron. And I mean, they were hard as woodpecker lips. The NCOs were super hard. They took no shit. The soldiers were hard as shit, but at the same time, everybody took care of each other, and they didn't let anybody fuck with each other. You know what I mean? So it was very intimidating going into Bravo Troop itself, let alone being put in Red Platoon.
And when you arrived in Afghanistan, did you go straight to COP Keating, or did you go somewhere else?
No, I didn't. I took the longer route, so I volunteered to leave early, like escort the equipment in. So by the time I got to Keating, my guys had been there for a couple weeks, even though I'd already been kind of floating around Kuwait and Afghanistan for a month, kind of escorting the equipment up.
Sounds to me like you were itching to get into some action.
Well, it wasn't only that. I think the reason I volunteered to leave early is you had to leave a month early, and I was a single dude at the time. I had no responsibilities, and I mean, they were going to pick somebody. I was like, dude, I might as well. Plus, I mean, you get the extra, was it like $350 a month for combat pay or whatever? So,
Heck yeah.
I figured I might as well go because I got nothing to do anyways, and I was going to blow all my money and make bad decisions anyways.
So when did you arrive in Afghanistan?
I don't remember the exact month. It was probably, man, I don't remember the exact month we got there.
How long before this firefight that you got into?
I think it was about 3 months. We'd been there 4 months before
So you
Keating
probably
had
showed
happened.
up.
It was very early on in the deployment. So, yeah, I want to say it was June or July, somewhere in there.
So when you first arrived in Afghanistan, which place did you go to?
Jalalabad.
Got you.
Yeah,
And
real chill.
when did you go to COP Keating?
So I went to Keating a couple days after that. And like I said, my unit was already there, and the helicopters, you can only get there by helicopter and only by Chinooks. They'd be the only one that go, and they'd only go there with Apache escorts because every time a big old Chinook flies through the valley there, they're getting shot at. So the pilots literally refused to fly unless they had escorts. So they'd only land on almost no moon nights. So you had a little short window there that they would fly in. But even when I landed in the middle of the night, you're wearing night vision and all that, and you get out of the helicopter and you get up and you look around, and everything is straight up, and you're just looking like straight up 360. And I remember thinking like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And I was like, okay, like maybe there's a vehicle here. I'm taking a truck up the road or something. Because I was all by myself. You know what I mean? No, you walk 50 yards and there you are. You're walking through the front gate.
And what was what was the point of the United States military having a camp at the most lowest level between the mountains? Like, what's the point of being there?
Well, at the time, so there was a road going between Fob Bostic and COP Keating. You could technically drive there, but the guys that had set that base up, they drove up the road. They got, absolutely wrecked just getting there. They got wrecked setting the COP up. And it was so remote, like we were outside of artillery range of our own support base. You know what I mean? Like we were just outside of all range for everything. So in the process of getting that COP set up, the Taliban had retaken the road. You couldn't take the road anymore. It was just too dangerous. Everything was pointing down, and I don't know the exact numbers or anything, but I know they tried to run missions in and out of there before, and they just made it living hell that nobody could get in and out. So that's when it became helicopter only. But I know the initial intention of the base was to kind of get a feel for the weapon supply routes coming in and out of Pakistan, because we were just a mile or two from the border, access a lot of those villages that had never seen some sort of structured government, and to try to bring them in and get them connected to all the bigger cities down south and get them supported with infrastructure and money, and get them to vote. You know what I mean? The first Afghan election happened while we were there, so that was a pretty big deal. But that was the initial intention of that outpost, which quickly kind of started to fade.
How did you feel looking up at the mountains and seeing yourself that you're in the bottom with the low ground against massive mountains?
Well, it goes against everything you've ever been taught in the military, right? All the training we trained up in Fort Carson. All the training you do, you get to the top of the mountain and you fight down, right? If you're at the bottom, it's real hard to fight up. You know what I mean? So that's the goal, is to get to the top and control the top. And if you control the top, there's a very good chance you control the bottom.
So if you're starting
out at the bottom,
outpost, are you feeling like really vulnerable?
Oh yeah. You can't. We had HESCOs everywhere, 10 feet in the air. But there's nowhere you couldn't go. You were looking up, everything was exposed. You couldn't go take a piss. You couldn't take a shit without, somebody watching you doing it and be able to pick you off in the process.
Man.
There's several times you'd be at the piss tubes and people just start taking pop shots at you while you're trying to take a piss.
Wow.
I mean, it got to be terrifying to be there during the night, just being in the middle of nowhere near an Afghan village and just yourself, and it's just only what was it like 2 platoons?
Yeah, so we kept the whole troop was our Alpha troop was or Bravo troop, sorry, was in charge of the COP, but we had one platoon up at the OP Fritchie above us, which you couldn't really see. They couldn't direct line see us. But yeah, there was 2 platoons down at Keating at all times. That was the main effort down there.
And what type of cover did you have there to protect you from incoming fire?
I mean, you had HESCO barriers, but I mean, when everybody's shooting at you from above, they're pointless unless you're right up against them. Our buildings were made out of bricks, and I'm not sure if it was some buildings that they took over when they built the COP, or they had somebody build them, but they were bricks and mortars. They had plywood and 2x6 ceilings, but there was stacks of 6 or 8 sandbags on top of that. That was your ceiling. You know what I mean, to protect you from bullets and B-10 rockets and mortars coming down on top of you. But those B-10s, they had one of those set up for a long time, and they'd punch right through all that stuff.
So I want to take you through when the beginning of that firefight start. Mm-hmm. What were you doing during that time, and what was going on? Like, what time is it? How did that go when that first firefight starts?
So everybody was sleeping. I was sleeping. That was most of the time when we got hit. It was first thing in the morning. So everybody was sleeping. It was right around sunrise, and I remember waking up and hearing explosions going off. And look, I mean, it was just, muscle memory. You throw your kit on, you hear gunfire, and you throw your stuff on, and everybody had assigned positions that they go to in the middle of a fight. And you start going to those positions. Well, it takes you, a minute to go from your underwear to full kit. And in that minute, you start to wake up and you can start hearing the intensity of the gunfire going on that morning. And a lot of times it was 1 or 2 rockets, and, our guys would send some bursts of 50 or 240 out, or you hear the Mark 19 going off. But it was immediate, all guns blazing, all sides, them, us. I mean, explosions every 2 or 3 seconds, buildings shaking, rocking. And you knew immediately. Like, I looked at a couple guys as I was getting dressed, and if you had that nonverbal communication, and we're like, dude, what the fuck is going on here?
What time was it at that time?
Man, I want to say it was about 6:37 in the morning ish. Don't quote me on that, but yeah, that was about that time.
Wow. So you knew immediately that this was different. This was unlike.
Oh, dude, it was big time, man. It wasn't their usual harassing fire, their usual morning firefights they'd get into. Immediately. I mean, I'd never heard that kind of incoming fire in my life. You know what I mean?
When did you realize?
Going back and looking at the videos. What's that?
When did you realize how outnumbered you were?
Honestly, I don't. Hours into it, I think. I don't think I mean.
So it's not like you could see all of the enemy at once. They just kept showing. Right?
No, and when I woke up, I was supposed to go to because we didn't have guard towers. We used Humvees that didn't run anymore as guard towers. Those were our spots, and some had 50 cals mounted, some had Mark 19s mounted, some of them had 240s and stuff. But the position I ran to, it was a 50 cal, and I got there, and he'd already burned through 200 or 300 rounds before I had even got there. And I'm talking 5 minutes maybe.
God.
And I saw the ammo laying on the ground. I get there, and I'm throwing ammo cans up, and I'm trying to link belts for him together. And I remember linking belts together for him, and I see these 2 dudes running behind. He's facing up one hill, and I'm facing behind, or I'm looking behind him, so where his back is turned. I see these 2 guys running, and I was like, "What the fuck?" And it took me a minute because I'd never been that close, and it took me a minute to realize. And I was like, "Holy shit!" I said, "That's Taliban fighters." You know what I mean? So I grabbed my M4 real quick, and I started engaging those guys. And I think that's the first cue I had, like, mentally, that I was like, "Dude, what the fuck is going on here? These guys are trying hard today." You know what I mean? I said, they came to fight today.
So you just turned around and you noticed there were Taliban fighters just about meters away from you.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say 100 meters. There was a little gate that nobody really knew about that we kept back there to get in and out on our own accord. And maybe they knew about it, maybe they didn't. But yeah, they were. It looked like they were running straight towards that little gate. There's two of them, and they had AKs in their hand. And
Would you
everybody
say? Would you say, Thomas, would you say that this was the first time in your life that you were able to see the enemy that close to you?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, Iraq. You were in Iraq. I don't need to preach to the choir on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they'd launch some IEDs and they'd spray some gunfire here and there, and then they'd run. Afghanistan.
There's a special feeling.
Yeah.
When you see your enemy for the first time.
Oh yeah.
Really, it has a. I don't know how to describe that, but there's like some kind of hormone that comes out of your brain. There is something about when you notice your enemy is close.
Yeah.
Something that just, I don't know how I can describe it.
Thomas, at any point during this fight, were you close enough with any of these enemy fighters to make eye contact?
Oh yeah, there was points in the fight that we were. I mean, I wouldn't say hand-to-hand combat range, but it was just outside that. You know what I mean?
What's it feel like to make eye contact with the Taliban?
It pisses you off. You know what I mean? It's a feeling of like, how the fuck did you get that close to me? You know what I mean? Like you're an American soldier. You're arrogant. You're the best thing on the face of the earth. You're the best fighting force. Like who told you could get that close to me? You know what I mean?
Wow.
I mean, what was like at that point? You are just meters away from Taliban fighters who are closing into you. This is the first time in your life that you see your enemy this close to you. What was going out through your head at that point?
I mean, not much. It's not like you have time to emotionally think about or process what's going on, right? Like all your training kicks in, all your muscle memory kicks in, and you see them. And anybody who's in combat who's listening to this knows. And for the civilian, I guess people who've never been through something like this, it's your brain has a special way in any high adrenaline, high intensity situation of everything's going on in a second, but your brain has the ability to slow that down. And it seems like a minute or two. You know what I mean? So you're processing what's happening in less than a second. So what seems like forever is really, no time. So your muscle memory is kicking in, and you just start engaging the enemy. You know what I mean? That's why you spend so many hours training. It's every drill you have known to man, and your basic drill when you join is react to contact. You know what I mean? So it kicks in, and you start firing.
So you see these two guys headed for the back gate. You put fire down on them. At what point did you go inside to get more ammo? And I guess you helped your buddy that had been injured?
Yeah. So we had ran out the 50 cal position I was at. We started running out of ammo. And I told him, I said, I'll be back. I need to go get more 50 cal ammo and get some other guys to bring more ammo. I can only carry a couple at a time, and the way we're burning through this, I need a lot more. So I didn't know the entire situation of what was going on. So I had ran back to our barracks room to see if there was anybody in there to help me carry ammo, and that's when I ran into Sergeant Romachet. And he kind of broke it down for me, and I noticed kind of nonchalantly he was bleeding out of his arm. And I asked him what had happened, and he said he was up against a generator and RPG hit and threw shrapnel into his arm. And I said, well, let's get it patched up. And he's like, no, it's fine. I said, it's not bleeding bad, but I said, we need to at least keep it from getting infected and all this stuff. So it's not like I saved his life or anything, but I was just trying to take care of it for him so he could keep fighting.
So it was a patch and go. Down.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, let's get it patched up, keep it controlled, and at least not keep it or letting it infected.
So what happened next? Like were you able to get the 50 cal ammo, or is that when you tried to open the door and you got barraged by?
No, he'd kind of redirected. And this is still early on. Like we didn't even have air support at this time. At this point, I didn't know by the time I had left that 50 cal position that we were the only machine gun left talking on the base. And when I was there still, I noticed mortar rounds hitting, RPGs hitting all around us. And then going back and noticing everything. But yeah, we were the last 50 cal position on the base talking. So they had focused all their efforts on us.
Now, why were you the last ones talking? Is that because everyone else had ran out of ammo, or is it because they'd been?
No, they just overwhelmed everything so fast. They'd overwhelmed the mortar pit. The mortar guys couldn't get out of the building to fire off the mortars. The first guy that was killed was Kevin Thompson, and he was killed, I mean, almost immediately right off the bat. So those guys were, as soon as they'd get out the door, they were getting shot. So they.
How was he killed, Thomas?
He was hit gunfire. He got shot in the head immediately, so he died pretty quickly.
I mean, at what point did you feel that you were being attacked by over 400 Taliban fighters?
It was after I went back and linked up with Bromache, and we had ran over to help Copus, who was on the Mark 19 position, and he had a sniper hitting his. We had Kevlar hanging behind the gunners' turrets, you know what I mean, behind everybody's head, so that they couldn't get shot in the head by snipers and stuff while they were on the guard tower. And he had a sniper, gunning for him. He kept hitting that Kevlar blanket, hoping it would go through. So I went over there with Bromache to help kind of provide suppressive fire, and he was, launching those Mark 19 rounds, and we ran back to the aid station and kind of had a fighting station established there. And that's the first time I had sat down and kind of just absorbed the whole situation. And I mean, guys shooting up into the mountains up on the north face, guys shooting up in the mountains on RPG Rock, guys, there's a village across the river in Ermul that was just a wall of machine gun fire coming from it, and everybody trying to lay fire into it. I mean, that's the first time I had sat down and really kind of acknowledged that we were taking it 360 high and low from every direction. Everywhere you looked, I mean, it was it was like hail, you know what I mean, hitting the ground next to you. I mean, bullet fragments and dust, flying through the air. It was just, that's when it really set in, how dire of a situation it really was.
So with these shots landing all around you, are you just trying to do your job, or are you kind of braced, like the next one might hit me?
No, man, you just do your job. I don't think. It's like I said earlier, you don't have a time to sit down and emotionally process anything. You know what I mean? You're there to fight. You're there to win. You're there to, kill the fucking enemy. I'm not here to process what's going on. I'm here for a mission, and that's for me and my homies to go home, and you guys have to die to make that happen. I
got to say that it is really scary that 52 American soldiers facing over 400 Talibans. That has to be terrifying.
Oh yeah, dude. If you would have prepped me beforehand and woke me up and say, "Hey, it's 400 against 50 today," it would have been a different story. You know what I mean? But in the mountains of Afghanistan, and it's kind of Iraq, you don't really get to see the full fathom. It's not a conventional warfare. I mean, there's people hiding behind rocks the size of humans and running around like little fucking goats and stuff. I mean, you don't really know what you're facing until after the fact.
Now, these Taliban, this is not a ragtag operation. These guys are trained, right?
Nah, dude, it's and it might hurt some feelings saying this, but I mean they're good at what they did. You know what I mean? They were trained. They had some intensity to them. They were gonna die, in the process, and they knew that, and they didn't give a shit. They had it planned out very well. I mean, the helicopters that were flying through the valley to come support us. I mean, miles down the valley, they had several discus positions set up through the valley. Providing.
Seriously,
different defilades of fire on them as they were coming in, so the helicopters couldn't even get into the valley. You know what I mean? They knew what they were doing, and they had planned it out very well.
A Dushka bullet, that would kill you immediately.
Oh, it's a 50 cal bullet. I mean, if it touches any part of your body, you're dead.
Immediately, that will take your life right away. I mean, just having Dushkas being shot at you, that is not a joke.
Yeah.
That could shred you. There's nothing could really stop you. No body armor, nothing really could help.
And you're talking about an enemy, they have home field advantage. They know exactly where they are, exactly what they need to do.
Yeah. And the enemy has the high ground too.
Yeah.
The enemy has the high ground. They have the low ground. So the enemy is already at advantage fighting these guys. And I got to tell you, watching it from the Taliban footage, these Taliban fighters did not look like an average fighters.
No. They brought their best.
They brought their best.
Wow.
Yeah. When I watched it, I watched for the Taliban footage attacking, and it's just scary. There was no movie. There was no sound effects. There's no. There's really nothing out there shows what the real battle. Watching it from the Taliban eyes, going down the mountain, attacking that fob, it is scary.
It probably looked like they were fish in a barrel, right?
Yeah,
easy targets.
I mean,
the best way I've learned to describe it over the years, telling a story, is, I mean, a football game. You go to a football stadium, and we were the players on the field that day, and the entire stadium was filled with fans, except the fans had guns and rockets.
Wow,
that's exactly how it was.
Wow, that's what a way to describe it. I mean, I gotta think about the mental thing you were going through. I mean, I can't imagine what this was like mentally. Being in a firefight through my career in the military, my response was completely different every time. And I was wondering, like, everybody has a breaking point at a firefight. And I believe in that. I believe that everybody has a breaking point at some point. I've been in a firefight for 2 hours. Yeah, I got to say it, at some point you get tired. You can break down. And at some point you can get yourself back up and get yourself. It's almost like a workout. You know, it's like you push hard, and sometimes you have I do feel in my heart that every man has a breaking point at some point. But this went on for hours and hours. This firefight between the U.S. soldiers and the Taliban went on for hours and hours. At what point did you feel that you felt that your energy was slowing down?
Man, I do have one of those moments, and I wouldn't say it was a breaking point. It was like a realization point. And it was when we had just started to take back the COP, and we'd fought our way back to what we called the Shura building. It was the building right next to the main gate. And I was sitting in that building with Clint, and there's a couple other guys. I don't remember who it was. I was kind of zoned in at the moment, and we were drinking somebody had found some Dr. Peppers, so we were drinking Dr. Peppers. And I mean, I remember RPGs hitting the roof, and I remember bullets bouncing everywhere, and him and I were just sitting in there drinking these Dr. Peppers, and I looked at him, and I was like, they're not letting us fucking out of here today, are they? And he was like, I don't know. He's like, that's not for me to answer. And I said,
so at that point, you felt at that. So you basically felt that this time the Taliban were not really trying to hit and run. This time they're trying to occupy the base.
Oh yeah, and this is at the point, like, we knew they were on the COP. Like, I had shot guys, 30, 40 yards in front of me. So we knew they had infiltrated
inside the walls with you.
Oh yeah, they had breached the front gate. They were in our COP in very good numbers. So, but yeah, that was the first realization, is watching all those bombs hit around us, and they were hitting the building and bouncing around inside, and I was like, all right, well, they're not going to let us out of here. They're trying to kill everybody today, and they brought the people to do it.
Did you ever get the feeling that you weren't going home?
Oh yeah. It was at that point, you know what I mean, and it's kind of, and I guess I haven't told a lot of people this. It's going out on national whatever now, but all my deployments, I always carried, a bullet in my pocket, just because you watch all the YouTube videos of, soldiers getting captured. No, I mean, be real, nobody makes it home. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I knew, like, I wasn't going to let that happen. You know what I mean? That last bullet was for myself. So there was a few times I kept checking to make sure that bullet was in my pocket. You know what I mean? So.
Do you know where I kept my bullet the whole time? I always kept it in my pinhole right here in my pocket.
Did you?
Yeah. That's the way I always kept it.
What was it? A small, like a pistol bullet?
No, I had an AK bullet. Okay. Because I was afraid I would shoot it and I would not know that I ran out. So I always kept it completely out of the magazine. And in Haifa Street, I actually had it right in there.
Wow.
Yeah. When I left Haifa Street, I had 16 bullet left in my magazine. These are the last 16 bullet I own. This was my 17 bullet.
Yeah.
It was right here. And I kept it there. And, at the time, man, getting captured by this enemy, this is not a country. This is not a country that's going to follow the Geneva Convention. You're not going to be a POW. No. You get captured by a radical Islamist enemy like the Taliban or Al-Qaeda, you are going to get beheaded. And the best way is you die in battle. and not let your family watch that pain.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because you'll hurt a lot of people. And trust me that the enemy, I watched in the footage that the Taliban filmed of actually this fight. And there are psychological aspects that I look for in a firefight that reminds me literally of things that I've been through. And the one thing that really got my attention by watching the real footage, the Taliban attacking Camp Keating, is that the Taliban guys that got shot, that really what makes difference in the fight. Because any enemy, when they're attacking you, they are going to keep pushing forward at you, and nothing else will stop them unless you kill somebody among them. That right there actually slows them down. And I'm watching the footage, and I've seen what Thomas have told me in the past about all the people he shot at a close distance. And actually, when I watched the Taliban footage, I saw a couple of Taliban guys that were shot in the face and laid down, and a couple of Taliban guys were trying to get medical treatment, and I don't think one of them made it. But that really what changes the game. Because if you didn't do that, they will be right at your front line and top of your head. They'll keep pushing at you until they get on top of you and kill you. But that really what changes. If you want to stop an enemy that is attacking you at any angle, at any number, shoot someone. Give an accurate shot to your enemy, they'll stop. This is exactly what went down with me 2004 in Hyper Street. And it was kind of crazy to watch the Taliban footage and see the morality of the Taliban were going down as people were getting shot. So it doesn't matter. They could be 400, they could be 800, they could be 1,000. The moment the rest of them seen someone get shot in the face, that drops the energy in half.
Thomas, how many American casualties did we suffer during this fight?
So we had 8 guys killed that day.
Did you know any of them personally?
Kind of throughout the day. I'm sorry?
Did you know any of them personally?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you live in close quarters like that, and especially the guys from my platoon, Kirk and Hart and Gallegos and Mace. I mean, you live 2 feet from each other the entire time. Plus, our platoon had a special, very special bond going into the deployment. That no unit that I had ever after that or before that had. Everybody was tight. Everybody was friends. Even, the higher up leadership, the platoon sergeants and the platoon commanders. You could all smoke and joke and hang out and fuck with each other. And it really is. It's like somebody walking into your house and killing your brothers right in front of you. You know what I mean? There's literally no difference.
A platoon is so small that, these guys becomes family, man.
Yeah. So I know you probably don't know the exact number, but can you estimate how many casualties the Taliban took?
So, there's been varying reports on how many got killed. I've heard upwards of 300 to 350. There was a QRF element that came down after, we were able to, with air support, get enough control of everything that they were able to make their way down. And some ODA teams that landed on other mountainsides around us that made their way down. And they said the whole time they were walking down the mountains, they were just stepping over dead bodies. It was just, they'd take 2 steps, have to step over a dead body. And you're talking at least a mile down each mountain, you know what I mean? So an exact number, I don't know, but I would think, 300 would probably be 250, 300 is probably a healthy, accurate number.
If you think about it, the enemy was coming down from the top of the mountain. They have an advantage there at a high ground. However, the American soldiers are in a defensive position. Always when you're in a defensive position at the same place, it's a lot easier for you than the attacker who's coming at you.
Because it's like cornering a lion, right? He's going to fight.
Because it's just you are pretty much at the same position. They are the one that are moving towards you.
Okay.
And moving is exposing.
To come to me. Yeah.
And it's harder to shoot when you're on the move versus when you're
definitely when you take one position. That's really what saves you. That's really what changes everything. And that always takes me back to Hyper Street. It's really being in one position. It's a lot easier. Most of my people that died because they were moving.
Yeah.
When you take one position, you really try to defend yourself and to stay in one position. It's a lot easier than the enemy that it's moving from one rock to a rock or moving from one neighborhood to another or from one door to another. So it's really, there's a lot of things about there are benefits to being at low ground, and there's negative and positive in every single situation when it comes to fighting, and that of course depends on your training. But the way they were outnumbered is a pure insanity, and I believe in my heart that the Taliban that day did feel they can get this done. This is only 52 American soldiers versus hundreds of Taliban.
Yeah.
And there is no air support. There is nobody that can come there to help you. And that's how exactly they felt.
Right. So, Tom, what ultimately ended the fight? Did you just take so many of them out, the rest retreated? How did that work?
No, man, it's really to be honest with you, we were getting our ass kicked pretty good until air support checked on. You know what I mean? That's a difference between us and every other fighting force that we fought since World War II is our air support. Once that started checking on station, and I think the first Apaches that checked on station took out, I think it was like 30 or 40 guys that were getting ready to breach the front gate. Their first gun run, they just that 25 Mike just started douching them up pretty good. You know what I mean?
And I want to take you back, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to take you back before the air support came in.
Right.
When the Taliban made it inside of the FOP, or made it inside of the COP Keating, and now the fight has moved inside of the wire.
Right.
How did that, what was going on inside of you? What was going on through your head when you felt now the enemy is inside of the wire, they have passed the gate, and now the fight is pretty much going door to door, or how do you say it? Basically you guys are fighting in your barracks.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, keep in mind, the entire COP might be bigger than a football field. You know what I mean? So when we had reconsolidated into our barracks room, we were getting ready to push back out to re-secure the COP. And that's when Sergeant Stanley and I had opened the front door, and they were going to provide suppressive fire for us while we ran out to start securing our own COP again. And as soon as Stanley opened that door, I mean, there was a guy 50 meters from us, in a place I'd walked hundreds of times going back and forth to the pisser and the shower and all that, with an AK, stood right there and launched half a mag, right down in front of the door, and shoved us back in the door. And I got back in the door, and I looked at Stanley. I was like, dude, they're on the fucking base. They're on the fucking base, dude. And it pisses you off. You're like, you're in my house. This is not okay. And it pisses you off in a good way, because now you get to use this anger in a healthy manner, because now you have to look me in the eyes when I shoot you. You know what I mean? It's not you get to hide anymore. Like, no, you're here. You're in my house. You get to look at me when I do this to you. So we'd launched some 203s coming out the door, and I don't know what the minimum. I know the 203s, they detonate on how many times they spin before it arms, but it had to have been like the minimum amount for that 203 to go off to kill that guy that was sitting right there.
Sorry, Tom. What is a 203?
A 203 is it's a grenade that's fired out of a tube, essentially attached to your rifle. It's a 40 millimeter
that's the tube
grenade.
You always see underneath the M4s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a single shot rifle, I guess. And yeah, it's attached to the bottom of your rifle. You put the 40 millimeter grenade in there, and it's got a 5 meter kill radius on it. So,
I mean, at this point, did you? I mean, like in an honest way, how afraid are you when you saw they were right there inside of the base? They're right there next to your barracks. Did you think about the other guys? Like, what are the other soldiers are? What's happening behind you? What are the parts that you were not seeing? What was it going through your mind?
Well, yeah, and that was the part that pissed us off the most. Is so the Taliban is in between us and guys that we don't have accounted for. We haven't heard from on the radio in forever. We don't know if they're alive, they're dead, if they've been kidnapped. I mean, we don't know. So now the Taliban's in between us and I'm not going to say other soldiers, because they're our best friends, they're our family. So it pisses you off even more. You know what I mean? Because in your head, like I said earlier, you know what happens on YouTube when these guys get captured, and I'm not going to allow that to happen to my brothers. You know what I mean? So it enrages you even more.
So at this point, you're not really afraid. You're more angry.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So basically, you decided within yourself that you'd rather die and get shot versus getting captured by the enemy and get beheaded.
Oh yeah. And when I was sitting there with Romache and I was talking about, they're not going to let us out of here. It's a moment you're like, all right, fuck it. Like, you're going to kill me today. That's fine. I said, but I will kill as many of you, as I can before I go down. That's just how it is. Like, I'm not going to go quietly screaming. I'm not going to give up. Like, every round in my gun is going to get fired, and I'm going to take all of you out before you kill me.
And that's when Sergeant Ramasha decided to take back the part of the base that you guys lost to the Taliban.
Yep.
I mean, that got to be hard, man. Just how many guys did he take with him?
There was, I don't know the exact amount. I think there was about 5 or 6 of us that kind of volunteered to be the assault element to push out and to kind of re-secure the COP. Because you keep in mind is where we were. It was in the middle, and we had the Afghan forces off on one side, and the part that the Taliban had taken over, where our other fighting positions were, where we lost contact with our other brothers, and the Afghans had abandoned posts. They ran, so we had 2 open sides. You know what I mean? On our COP. We're not even talking about just in the fight anymore. Just on our COP. So we were surrounded within 50 meters of our own building.
I mean, this is like 8 of you guys going at it, hundreds of people. It's like this is 8 of you guys going against 100 of Talibans, and you don't even know how many Talibans are out there in front of you, and you just decided to push
towards this point in mind, you've determined that they're all 50 meters in front of you. You just can't see them yet. You're going to turn a corner. They're all going to be sitting right there.
And when Sergeant Ramashaw asked for volunteers, did he ask for a volunteer, or like, what was going on during that moment when he made that decision to take back the base and try to push the Taliban out of the compound?
Nah, he'd come in, and he'd already hashed out his plan with the higher ups, and he came in to the barracks building, and he said, "We're taking this bitch back." He said, "I need volunteers," and I was one of the first ones to raise my hand. I'm not going to sit there silently and wait for you to come to me. I'm going to take the fight to you. Fuck you. This is my house. Like, you're not better than me. You know what I mean? I got friends out there that need my help, and families that need to see their sons again, no matter what, the condition. And it's up to me to make that happen. You know what I mean? So I'm not gonna sit by and just wait for my time.
So when you got out of that room, 8 of you guys going against that many Taliban, you probably felt you were not coming back from this.
Oh yeah. You've accepted death at that point. You know what I mean? You're going to do whatever it takes at that point.
Did you abstain any injuries during this fight at all?
I did. I didn't know it at the time. Early on in the fight, when you had said that the RPG hit the truck, is I was helping reload the ammo for that 50 cal, and a 50 RPG had hit the front of the truck, and my ass was hanging over the windshield, helping him reload his gun, and threw me off the truck, and I didn't feel any pain. I didn't notice any blood anywhere, but I had taken some shrapnel in my thighs, in my butt area.
At what point did you realize that you had that shrapnel?
It was actually a couple days later when I'd finally got a shower, and I'd taken my pants off, and I looked at my legs, and I had little black marks. I didn't know if they were dirt or what, and they wouldn't come off, and I started squeezing little pieces of shrapnel out of my leg.
Oh, man.
It's like a BB
So
gun.
you didn't even realize you were injured until 2-3 days later when you got a shower?
Yeah, the adrenaline hits, and there's just no...
It depends on the size of the shrapnel.
You hear right, and you hear stories all the time. People get shot and don't know it. The adrenaline takes over, and your body, doesn't feel pain at that point. It's just
I literally talked about that in my book, man. That's exactly. I was shot and I didn't know too, because when your body's pretty much your body's very hot. Sometimes not bullets, shrapnels hit you, you will think that you got scratched. You will think that a stone that hit you. The whole time I was shot in the face, I thought a stone that hit me in the face. It wasn't. It was a shrapnel. So when your body is at a certain level and your brain is really like disconnected from the body, and you're just really going at it, sometimes you don't feel what you're going through. You could be bleeding and you just wouldn't know. Unless you get shot by something really significant, then you would know. But I want Thomas, I want you to tell me the details when you came out with Sergeant Ramashaw and you started taking down the base, step by step. I know this has to be slow because you guys are going like door to door trying to get, and I'm sure it seemed like impossible to make it to the wall of the base, but how did that go, that whole process, when you guys decided to charge at the Taliban and finally take down your base?
I mean, it's a door-to-door fight. It's a 50-meter fight at a time. That's all you can do is take 50 meters at a time. We'd cleared out, and from our barracks building, you had to round a little corner, and it was a little hallway of Hescos. And right around the other side of that Hescos was our ammo supply point. And the Taliban at that point had control of our ammo supply point. So that was our greatest, focal point, was to take that back so that we had enough ammo to keep fighting. But also at that supply point, there was a little, I guess, a fighting position built into the Hescos. So we kind of used it as a staging point to hold our ground to fight the guys outside the wire that were trying to still come in, and fight the guys inside the wire that were already there, so we could keep advancing our position.
How many guys were around your ammo supply?
There was, I think, 7 or 8 of us.
No, I mean of them.
We had, of them? I mean, I don't know. At that point, it's you're fighting what's in front of you. And that little wall was like head height outside, so we would see guys running. And we had a Jones was there with a 249 trying to light people up with a saw. We had a guy named Delaney there. He was, providing suppressive fire for Jones to watch his back while he was shooting people. But that's where, when we got to the ammo supply point, we had access to grenades. So I started taking grenades and I was throwing them over the Hescos because the guys were running along the Hescos. So, we would just take as many grenades as we could and pop them over the Hescos, trying to kill the guys, running back and forth.
How long did it take you guys when 8 of you guys are going out trying to take back the base? How long did it take? I mean, think about it. I mean, the enemy, 8 of you guys went out to fight the enemy so you can liberate the ammo supply center, basically. So that way you don't run out of ammo. I mean, how terrifying is it to know that you might run out of ammo while the enemy is inside of the base?
It's a very realistic feeling. It's something that it's a very right now to do moment. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know how to describe it other than a very realistic awakening moment. Like, I have to do this right now, or we are fucked. You know what I mean?
This was your basically this was your last shot to continue the fight.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I can't imagine the feeling like, when you know that your ammo supply is being taken by the enemy, and you might run out of ammo, and the enemy might just walk you out of there alive.
Yeah, that or the ammo is just going to be used against you. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I mean, we had everything in there, AT4s and C4 and all of it.
So there was C4 inside. They had literally. So do you think the Taliban knew? Do you think the Taliban knew this was your ammo supply, or do you think they
may have
on the fight?
Right. They may have. I'm not real sure. I mean, they're pretty good at their recon beforehand. I don't know if they knew specifically that was an ammo building, but if they would have figured out that was the ammo point, then yeah, they would have had the upper hand very, very quickly.
What does it feel like when the fight's over and the adrenaline finally wears off? Are you just completely exhausted?
Yeah, dude, it's you've wasted all your adrenaline. I mean, you wasted every calorie in your body, and we couldn't get any medevacs in that day to come get our wounded, our KIA. So it was after we had loaded all of our wounded and dead onto the helicopter, and the QRF had made it down to us, and you actually had time to sit down and breathe, and there was no more shots being fired, that you really kind of you sat down and you realized the severity of the situation and what had just happened. You know what I mean? And you're. I want to take you back.
I want to take you back when you were fighting, and at what point did air support arrive?
I want to say it arrived, maybe 3-ish hours, 2-ish hours into the fight. It was a pretty significant amount of time before air support could get to us. And at the time, the Bo Bergdahl thing was happening. There was a pretty significant operation going on north of us. So all air assets in the country had been diverted elsewhere. So there was nothing up by us. So they had to come from a long ways away to even get to us.
Did you feel like your morality went up once you saw the air support right above you?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's, like I said earlier, that's, as an American soldier, the greatest asset you have is your air support. You know what I mean? You know that you're good. It's like being a little kid and going out and doing whatever, and you know your dad's right next to you. Nothing bad can happen to you. You know what I mean? Nothing bad can happen to me if I got my air support with me. So
What
as
kind
soon
of
as
air
you hear
support
those
did you
first gun
have?
runs
Was
from
it-
the Apaches and those first bombs being dropped from the fighter jets, I mean, you knew at that point, like, okay, we can do this.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. Your air support, was it Apaches and also you said bombers?
It was everything. At that point in the country, once we announced that, over the radio that we were being overrun, every air asset in the country got rediverted to us. So we had, if you think about it, it's like a tornado above our COP that day. And as you checked on station as a new aircraft coming in with whatever rounds, you went to the top of the tornado, and everybody just kept making their way down and down. And you do your gun runs, go what's called Winchester. You know what I mean? You run out, you blow all your ammo, blow everything up, and then you take off and go back and rearm and refuel, and you come back later. So I mean, we had B-1 bombers, we had fighter jets, we had Apaches, we had later in the night. I can't think of the name. What's the planes with the 40 Mike Mites and artillery pieces in them? Yeah, the Spectre gunships. We had those, flying for us.
Now, are they picking out their own targets, or there's someone in the COP calling out targets?
No, we had Sergeant Armando Avalos, who was our fister. He's a forward observer, and that was his entire job, was to call out targets for air support. But at the same time, as we're fighting, you know what I mean, we have direct contact with the pilots, telling them, hey, I got guys here, I got guys up the river, and we try to mark them with smoke from the 203s every now and then to direct them on the target. But I mean, it was such a target-rich environment at that moment that, I mean, we'd tell them, like, hey, I need bombs dropped here, I need bombs dropped there, and a lot of times we're just trying to drop bombs everywhere to overwhelm the enemy, and just as a hush moment, like, hey, shut up, our big boys are here, you're fucked, you can't go anywhere.
What was the Taliban? What was the Taliban reaction when the U.S. air support arrived in battle?
I mean, they definitely, it slacked off a little bit, but you still had the hardcore guys. You know what I mean? The extreme fighters that still thought that they could fight. So I mean, it wasn't near over at that point. I mean, they still thought that they could win. And I don't know if, and you probably know better than I do, but I don't know if they really know the true technology that those planes have and what they can see and what they can't see.
Especially with the Apache.
Right, yeah.
They always feel that the Apache can't see them. They don't realize the Apache can see them from 8 miles away.
Yeah, there's nothing the Apache can't see.
Yeah, and I've seen it. I've actually watched video of Taliban's reacting to Apache attacks, and then I don't think they realize the technology in that bird, how advanced it is, and which makes it work, because I'm glad they don't know that, right? They don't know that the pilot could actually see you even if he's not looking at you. Even if he's not pointed at you, he can still see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. And I mean, the Taliban, especially the ones that we fought that day, they were extreme guys. They were there to fight. They weren't joking around. They weren't just going to get shot at once or twice and run. You know what I mean? They were there for the long haul. So, I mean, air support, I mean, it worked like it's supposed to, and they got scared and afraid, but it definitely didn't stop them.
And I wanted to ask you about the QRF that arrived in battle. How long did it take for the QRF to actually arrive to COP Keating?
They actually couldn't. They landed up at OP Fritchie at some point during the day. I don't know the exact time, and they didn't actually get to walk down until dark. When the fight was over, and the Taliban, they don't have the technology we do, so they can't fight at night. They know for sure they're going to get their ass kicked at night. So it was right around dark that the QRF walked its way down the mountain.
How many hours did you guys go into the fight not having any QRF?
The entire fight.
Wow.
So why was the QRF not able to get down to you? Were they pinned down?
Yeah, so they were up at our OP, and the Taliban, they'd been attacking our OP as much as they'd been attacking us. The OP had not artillery, they had mortar rounds up there that were meant to, support the COP down below it. But they knew that OP was up there, so they hit the OP just as hard as they hit us. So they couldn't get the mortars up, they couldn't get the machine guns up. They were in self-defense mode at that point too. But that wasn't the Taliban's main effort, so they were able to secure their place and get it quieted down a lot quicker than we were. So, like I said, I don't know what time or how many hours into the fight that QRF and a bunch of the special guys landed up there. But they'd been up there for quite a while waiting to make their way down to us.
The QRF is a quick reaction force, but imagine going into a battle for 8 hours without having a QRF. That got to be insane.
Well, yeah, that too, and I imagine like being the QRF and how helpless you feel. You're listening to all this going on the radio, and you're listening to, essentially us getting our ass kicked, for lack of a better term, and there's literally nothing you can do about it. You just got to sit there and listen to it. You know what I mean? So,
and that is psychologically breaking.
Right. Yeah.
That's got to feel like seeing a little kid play in the street about to get hit and you can't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean?
Wow.
When the fight was over, did you feel like did you feel like a sense of this is over, or did you feel like there's something still going to go down? Did you feel you were going to leave that day, or did you feel this is going to happen the next day? They're coming back.
No, we definitely thought that they were going to come back the next morning. You know what I mean? So we immediately, we used the QRF guys, and it was an infantry platoon. I can't remember the unit they came from, but it was about 50 guys that came down. So we used them to go back to the battle positions and reinforce the COP, and we'd kind of gathered in the middle to, I guess, figure out what had happened. Do a quick AAR, for lack of a better term, on everything, and then reinforce what we needed to reinforce, because they're coming back in the morning to finish what they started.
And
I remember actually it was.
Sorry, go ahead.
That night, Romeshay had set me up to the mortar pit to help reinforce the mortar pit for the next morning, to provide covering fire so that they could launch their mortars. And I remember you guys are talking about your emotions and your adrenaline and how tired you are, but I fell asleep next to the 120 mortar that night, and the first thing in the morning they were going to launch terrain denial missions with the 120, which a terrain denial mission is you're basically just blind shooting into spots you think they are to keep them off of those spots. And they had launched 5 or 6 rounds from the 120, and I was 2 feet from it, and I slept right through it. I didn't even wake up for it. You know what I mean? And a 120 mortar going off is basically a grenade going off 2 feet from you.
At that point, you were exhausted.
I was just so tired, and I dumped everything the day before that clearly there was nothing that's going to wake me up.
How shocked were the QRF guys that arrived at COP Keating to see you guys and see everything you were going through? What was the look in their face?
I didn't really get a chance to talk to them very much, and I didn't go out of my way to talk to them or try to, make friends or anything. They came in with a fresh attitude, and they were ready to fight. You know what I mean? And I'm sure in their head they're probably like, "Well, if this was here, I wouldn't have done that." And I've heard a couple of guys say that after the fact, but I heard from a couple of the other guys that I actually talked to that they were walking down the mountain, and they were just stepping over dead bodies and some of the wounded Taliban that they had to deal with. It was just chaos everywhere. You know what I mean? Before they got there. So I'm sure it was demoralizing in some aspect, like, holy shit, like, we weren't even in this fight and we're dealing with the aftermath, like, what's coming tomorrow? You know what I mean? Nobody
would know the feelings or the pressure that you are under a firefight, especially when you have lost 8 Americans in a battle in a piece of land that is not worth anything.
No. No.
Actually, there's a process. If you find an injured fighter, you are required to give him medical intention because you are not like them. Mm-hmm. They are the ones with no rules. You do have rules of the Geneva Convention you have to follow. Technically, that's where people actually can fall for war crimes. Mm-hmm. So for that, there's a process. So when they get detained and they still need medical intention, that doesn't mean they get thrown inside of a prison. They actually will go to a U.S. combat hospital, and they will receive the same exact treatment as an American soldier laying in bed. they'll get the same exact intention.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's a feeling. It's a weird feeling, right? Like I walked into the combat hospital, and I've been seeing a combat hospital in the green zone, and I have seen people were handcuffed to the bed. And I would ask and I'd say, what's that? They're like, oh, he was shot in a firefight last night, and he's laying here, and he's getting top-notch treatment. He's getting a U.S. Army officer in the rank of a captain, professional military nurse, giving him the best treatment possible, giving him all the attention they need. And it truly, when you look into that, that's what really separates us from our enemy.
But what does it feel like walking in there, seeing that enemy that could have killed one of your brothers?
Definitely, look, I mean, it's an animal instinct. You definitely have things in your heart. You definitely be like, why is this guy here, right? Like, why don't they just eliminate him? But the truth is, if you were in the fight as long, if you have understood your enemy, that is exactly what your enemies look for. That is exactly the action your enemy wants you to take. So they can actually show the rest of the people, or show the other villages, or show the town that this is what Americans are all about. The fact that when Americans actually find someone who's injured in the middle of a firefight or severely injured, and they give him their treatment and they stand by that person's side, it shows that Americans care. And I can guarantee you a lot of our own enemies have changed their thoughts when they were injured and they were treated at our hospitals.
Oh, yeah.
And they realized we are not really what they thought we were. And it changes a lot of people. And I've seen bad guys who are being treated by our military nurses in a combat hospitals, and I have seen their attitudes change within 2-3 days. And they don't talk to us as they talked to us on the first day. The tone changes. They might not tell you how they feel,
Right.
but the tone changes and I feel it. And that's what separates between us and them, man. I am not a big fan. I don't feel if you find an injured enemy and you're not in a firefight, you're not being pressure, that killing that enemy would make any difference. Truly does not make any difference at all. At that point, you're not making a difference. At that point, you should follow the rules and show them that you are more human than they are. And that's what it goes. I mean, there are so many times in my life where I could have done that. And it might feel better at a certain point, but it's not the right thing to do. Because if you do that, and the enemy gets hold of that, or could find a way to use that psychologically against you and advertise it to the rest of the nation, that means the soldier who's going to replace you in that deployment is going to pay the full price. So don't do it. And that's what really means. There's a lot of soldiers have changed the attitude in certain villages to save the next guy alive, the guy that's going to replace you. Or you can make that decision to put his life in danger by giving the enemy the advantage they need or the opportunity they're looking for. So, and when it comes to that, I don't, I'm always been straightforward about it. And I think when I got promoted and I took like a higher rank, I started thinking about it differently. Because it wasn't about me personally anymore. It wasn't about my vengeance. It was about how many soldiers I could keep alive. And if the enemy can get 90 people to join them because of one man action, then I didn't do anything. Then the guy's going to replace me the next day is going to pay the full price for the mistake that I have done. And that's where a lot
There's a fine line that separates us and them. You know what I mean? That's our
exactly.
world. You know what I mean?
And that's
we're all war fighters and we're all there to kill each other, but there's one fine little line that separates us from them.
We may be violent, but we're human.
Yeah.
And that's what separates between your humanity and them. Because the truth is, they're not human. They come at you. They don't just kill you. They're not just attacking you because you're in uniform with a gun. They could be doing the same exact thing to a little girl in the village. They could be doing that to a female. And that's exactly what separates between you and them. And honestly, I feel that when an enemy fighter is injured and you're giving him a treatment, you're not just treating him, you're actually insulting him. That's how I feel about it. You're insulting him. Because you're showing him you're a better human being than he is. And that's really where it separates. And I think that our beauty as as Americans, that we were treating people, even if someone got hurt in the middle of a firefight and they weren't an enemy fighter, they were just people walking in between. In Iraq is different than Afghanistan. This was a mountain, people going against one another. There was no innocent civilians in the middle of that fight. In Iraq, there are possibilities you can actually have a little girl or someone going from school get shot right in the middle of a firefight. And sometimes you are responsible to take care of these innocent people before you take care of your own soldiers.
Wow.
And sometimes there's only one medic, and you're required to do whatever you have to do. And it's a human thing, man. And you think about it. At the end of the day, there's a lot of people will say, like this person was in the middle, they maybe, and you feel about it, they had nothing to do with it. And it's your duty to show. That enemy fighter did not care about the kids being in the middle of that fight, but you did.
Yeah.
And that kid growing up who you saved or treated or gave medical attention to is going to know the difference.
They'll remember.
And I bet you they knew the difference in Iraq.
Nice.
They knew the difference.
So, Tom, what ultimately happened at COP Keating? Did we hold that base? Did we close it down? What happened?
So no, we didn't hold it. We stayed there for I think 2 more days before they exfilled us. They exfilled the QRF first, and they obviously come in the middle of the night, and they brought in some engineers to rig the whole place with explosives and on timed fuses. So as the last Chinook was going out, it was supposed to explode, but that didn't happen. So I think the next night or that night, going into the morning, they had dropped. I mean, I can't remember. It was, I think, 10 500-pound, 1,000-pound JDAMs on COP Keating to just get rid of, because we left all the equipment and all the, a lot of the ammo because we can't bring it all with us. So they tried to blow most of it up, and they did a pretty good job of it. I mean, there's some stuff that the Taliban tried to use as propaganda. You know what I mean? Like, look, we won, and they found some like belts of 5.56 ammo or some dumb shit. You know what I mean? But
what was your feeling?
We pulled out of there.
What was your feeling in that helicopter leaving that place? What was going on through you?
It was almost surreal. You know what I mean? You get on the plane, or I say the plane, you get on the helicopter and you'd lost everything. Like, it sounds funny because you don't really have anything, at a small combat outpost in the middle of Afghanistan except the military equipment you brought with you and maybe some letters and stuff from home. But like you're leaving the helicopter with nothing because, I mean, the entire COP had burned down around us. So it's like you're getting pulled out of your own home by the police, and you're just, as you're leaving in the cop car, it's burning to the ground. You know what I mean? It's kind of a helpless feeling. It's a very surreal moment. It's kind of, jaw dropping and heartbreaking, honestly.
So were you feeling like you were leaving a victor or a loser?
No, I can only speak for me personally, but it almost feels like you kind of as a failure. You know what I mean? Like, you got overwhelmed. They had destroyed, the entire COP in the firefight. And it's a very, I guess, I hate to say it out loud, but it's kind of demoralizing. You know what I mean? Like, did we ultimately win because you didn't take control? Yeah, we did. But, now we have to go somewhere else because it's destroyed and it's very vulnerable now. You know what I mean? So it's not the greatest feeling in the world. And you lost 80 of your best friends in the process of it. And another 30 plus of us were wounded. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a heartbreaking moment, I guess you could say.
So was your deployment over after that? Did you go back to the States, or you stayed there?
That was very early on in the deployment, so we still had almost a whole deployment to go after that.
Wow. Does any of your guys bring to go home with the guys that were killed?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Do any of your guys go home? I think traditionally, don't you escort the killed in action home?
No, there's details for that now. There's some guys back what's called left rear D, so some guys that didn't deploy with us for whatever reasons that will once the body lands back in America, they will land with that body and they will be with it until it's put in the ground.
Okay.
So we had some guys that were there for that, and they were there with the families, and they were a part of our unit, you know what I mean? So it wasn't just some random military people, having to deal with the families. So it was actually some kind of attachment going on there.
But you were not able to attend their funerals?
No, no.
So
we had memorial services.
You do?
What's that?
You have some type of ceremony before they leave to say goodbye?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you have a memorial service back at, Fob Bostic, which was our main squadron, our base. And I guess that's the moment when everything finally just started setting in. You know what I mean? And you're looking in front of you, and you got, pictures of all your eight friends, and the boots with the spurs attached to them, and the helmets with the rifles and the dog tags, and everybody starts talking about it, and they do the 21 gun salute and the roll call with everybody that's missing, and that's when human emotion starts to kick in, and you realize what had happened.
Is there part of you that you do you kind of hold the grief back until you're back stateside? Do you process everything right there, or are you still? I mean, maybe you're even still processing it to this day.
Right. Yeah. No, you have to hold it back. You know what I mean? You still have a whole deployment left in front of you. You know what I mean? You still have a mission to do. You have a job to accomplish. You have people that depend on you to make the right decisions and have a clear frame of view when you're doing that. You know what I mean? So you can't let your judgment get clouded in emotions. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You have a war. War is one of those things where there's no emotions allowed. You know what I mean? You have to do what you have to do, and you get it done and over with, and we'll talk about it later when we get home.
And it hits you hard when it gets home. When you get home.
Oh yeah, when you get home, it's a, and the thing is, when you get home is you don't know what's happening, but your brain's trying to tell you what's happening. You don't want to listen to it though. You know what I mean? And that's when a lot of the stories you hear about modern day, veteran, well, not even modern day, it's just all veterans. That's when they start to go haywire. They don't know how to process it. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what their brain's telling them.
Yeah. I know that feeling. It hits you hard when, I think it's kind of crazy to say, it's like, it hit you hard when you find peace. When you come back to your normal environment, that is when things start really coming out. Your emotions start really coming out. You start thinking clearly about the things that really went down.
Does it make you angry when you come back to the United States and you just came from a war zone, you just watched your buddies die, and you come back home and people here are acting like that's not even happening over there? Does that upset you?
I mean, at first it is, you know what I mean? It's because you're still high on the totem pole from that adrenaline and, from being overseas and, being the king dick in a firefight. So it's, when you come back, it's almost, it's, for me personally, I'm not going to speak for, everybody, but it's almost insulting. Like, how'd you not know about that? You know what I mean? My friend died in there. How'd you not hear about that? Why are you not talking about that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like Hamady said, it's peace is what's chaos for a lot of veterans. They don't know how to deal with peace. You know what I mean? Your whole entire military career is built around chaos. So
yeah, we spend months and months and months training soldiers, but when it's time to come home, we don't really teach them how to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been out for quite some time now, and I can only speak to my time, but when you come back, you go through a bunch of these bullshit classes on, don't beat your wife, and don't kick your dog, and don't spank your kids, and don't go out drinking and shit, at the same time...
Look, man, I spent 5 years at war, day by day, year after another, and this all 5 years at war, I never felt anything. It was normal environment for me. The moment I arrived to the United States and I'm here at a very normal stability environment, that's when everything hits me hard.
It's probably much different for you, though, Hamady, because in Tom's case, he went to war, he came back home again.
Yeah.
You never went home.
Yeah. There was no home for me.
Yeah.
You had to make a new home.
Yeah. For me, I was leaving home.
Yeah.
For me, it's like the same feeling. I was leaving. I didn't feel I was victorious leaving Iraq. I'm the one who left the fight. I was forced to leave. And when I left, I was like, It's been 5 years I've been putting my efforts towards this fight. And today I made the decision to walk away.
Did you feel like survivor guilt or something like that?
Definitely. I mean, I'm among a 17-man team that's only 4 of them still alive today. I'm one. So you wonder, right? And I would say, like, when I left Iraq, looking through the windows, like in the plane, looking through the windows, I left and I was just looking through the windows, and I went there and I'm like, how the hell did I leave this place?
Did you know that you would probably never see it again?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I had that feeling. I was like, I'm probably not gonna see this place again. And I felt that way for a reason, because you fought every single day for 5 years. I mean, these are war. This is battle every single day for 5 years. This was my environment every single day. And it was hard for me to let go. It was hard for me just to turn around and let go. And you know, I watched the guys that I fought take it over. And that's the sad part, is that when I watched it and I was just, you know, wondering, when I left, I felt like, was the lives that I gave worth the place I was fighting for? I always look into every place I fought at. Haifa Street, I fought in this little 500-meter place. And I always wonder, where the lives we gave worth that place? What were we fighting for? What are we fighting for? You always wondered, right? What were they fighting for? Did they win or we won? Nobody won. We killed a lot of them. They killed a lot of us. We caused damages to one another. And at the end of the day, I don't think this is an enjoyable story for them. Yeah. For the enemy, too. I don't think they're sitting today enjoying these stories. They lost people, too. And they have people that got shot in the face as well. So I always felt like, you know, sometimes I look at my pictures and I see the 10 meters I defended in 2004. And I always wonder, and I'm like, that's a piece of shit. 10 meters. It's worth nothing. It's just tarp. And you gave lives and lives and lives. So many people lives, not just the people that died, their families, everything they went through, their kids, their wives. Everything changes right in there. And it just shows you like how sacred blood is. A life or a soul, how sacred it is. You know, you kill it over nothing. You take it over nothing. And I always wonder, you know, like I always look at my enemies in Iraq. I always wondered. And I'm like, look, you fought these individuals so hard. You fought the Americans so hard because the Americans were in your country. But you were stupid enough to not take advantage of that and learn something from them to better your country. They come from a very advanced countries, more civil societies, much more developed than yours, and you didn't know how to take advantage of that. And instead you want to kill them. So who's doing you better now? Nobody. Yeah. Nobody's out there to teach you. I mean, that just want to show you that the people that fought the American military in Iraq never learned a lesson from this. But you know who learned a lesson from it? Their kids. Their kids, they're the one that opened barbecue joints in Baghdad. They're the one that build malls so they can copy America. Because these kids were not the ones fighting the American soldier. They're the one talking to him. And just by having a conversation with an American soldier goes to show you what Iraq turned to a lot better place than it was. It's a conversation they had. It's a little candy they took from an American soldier that changed their lives, and it changed the place. And it just goes to show you. And I'm sure Thomas felt the same thing about Afghanistan. I said it before in previous podcasts. Give Afghanistan 20 years and you'll be thankful for everything you went through in that place. Yeah. You'll never go for nothing. It always takes time. And you got to be willing. And if you sacrifice, you got to go all the way, man. It doesn't come in the end of the year. It takes years.
Yeah, and you look at, I mean, how Afghanistan's under Taliban control now, and everybody thinks it's a shame, but if you think, you know, the people that sat there, and how long were we there, 15 years or whatever it was, and the people that watched Americans there for 15 years aren't going to forget how much freedom they had, and the women got to go to college and walk around, you know, free-faced and being able to do whatever they want. Like, they remember that. It'll wake up inside of them.
I can assure you they will. And I can assure you they'll regret the day not having American soldiers standing in front of their door, because this happened in Iraq. You know,
I'm sure that once you've tasted that little bit of freedom,
yeah.
you're never going to be happy with anything else.
No.
Look what they done to Iraqi protesters, how they killed them and brutally killed them and prevent them from getting medical treatment and everything. And look what the response was from the protesters against the Iranian influence in Iraq. They told them one word: you couldn't do that to the American soldier when he was here. That's what they told them. Wow. And I can bet you, I can assure you, the Afghans will feel it at some point. And this is a younger generation that you got to give it a time. They're teenagers. They can't lift rocks. They can't carry weapons. They can't say no. This is the age of internet that they're still exposed to the Western world somehow, secretly or publicly. But at some point, they're going to have enough.
Tom, don't try to do this if you're not capable, but I did want to give you the opportunity to mention your brothers' names on the podcast in their honor.
Oh yeah, and I appreciate you doing that. No, it's the four guys from my platoon is Joshua Kirk and Stephen Mace. Kirk Kirk already messed one up. Justin Gallegos, Joshua Kirk, Stephen Mace, Joshua Hart. Then we had Scusa, Thompson, Sergeant. God, I feel like a piece of shit for not putting me on the spot here. Sergeant Martin. I mean, it was all throughout the fight, and they gave a sacrifice that, like Clint Romachet said on his Netflix show, it's that nobody can fathom. You know what I mean? They gave their life that so we could keep fighting, we could go home to our families, and it's something that should never be forgotten. And I know I'm not ignorant enough to think that every American is going to go around memorizing every name of every soldier that has died, but the more you can beat the war drum and the more speakers you can fill with their names, the longer their memory is going to live.
How old was Mace when he fell?
I don't know, and I don't even know how old I am half the time. I go off what my wife tells me, but I think he was 22 or 23 when he died. He was young.
I mean,
he might have been younger than that. Because I remember he used to drink a lot.
That is something
underage.
Something the American people should always be aware of and should always know that there are some people that ended their lives early for the rest.
I mean, you're ending your life before it even started at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, we were all 20, 22, 25 years old, and we had no idea what we were doing at that age. You know what I mean? You're just still full of piss and vinegar and thinking you're smarter and better than everybody, and you haven't figured life out, and you haven't even started your life. So
it's true.
I mean, there's thousands and thousands of Americans who died in these last two wars that didn't even get a chance to start their life. You know what I mean? And the more we get to tell their story and the more people hear their names, you know what I mean? The memory's going to live forever, and hopefully America will never forget, even in these tough times right now. You know what I mean? Hopefully people from both sides, you hear those names and it'll just shut you down for 1 second, make you think for 1 second, you know what I mean, of what it took to get here.
Wow. Is there anything you wanted to say to summarize, wrap this up?
No, man, I appreciate you guys having me on. I really do appreciate it. And anytime I get to tell a story of my 8 brothers that aren't home right now is a good day. I used to frown upon it, you know what I mean? And you'd shut down and you don't want to tell your story and, it's just for me. But, I've said his name plenty of times, and Romachet has kind of beat it into my head and woke me up about a lot of stuff, is nobody's going to know what happened if we don't tell the story. And I would pass that message on to a lot of veterans now. You know what I mean? You have to tell your story for people to know what happened. And they're never going to fully understand, and they're never going to fully appreciate what had happened, because unless you were there in those shoes, it's just not a realistic expectation. But
and before we wrap this, I'm sorry,
you're at least keeping their memory alive.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Before we wrap this up, I want to talk about the what you're doing now in your life. I know you're a big time hunter, and you have left no pigs in Texas. And
I try not to.
And I know that you have really one of the most enjoyable business out there that people can come and join you, and they go do hunting with you. And this is something that I want to do myself with you one day, because of how much fun it is. So if you can kindly tell us how would people be able to book a trip with you to go hunting? And I know you'll have lodges and you have everything. This is an exotic experience for anybody, so people could actually spend time with you and hunt with you. And I know it's so much fun. So if you can kindly give us a quick, how can people find you through that?
Yeah, so we have a Facebook page. It's called Outlaw Outfitters. We also have a website, outlawoutfittersllc.com, and we also have an Instagram page, Outlaw Outfitters. We're based out of North Texas. It's the guy that started Outlaw. He's one of my best friends to this day. I'm at his house right now because I live in the boons and the internet isn't the best at my house. But his name is Beau Saucier. He put his blood, sweat, and tears into it when it first started, and he still does it to this day. And I mean, we try to give the best experience we can to our clients. We bust our ass day in and day out to make sure they have the best experience known to man. Even if you're having a so-so hunt or not so good hunt, I guarantee you're gonna have a good time regardless. And we're gonna find something for you to shoot, whether it's what you came to target or not. But we're gonna find something for you to do.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was an amazing podcast. This was like something that I really enjoyed, and I've been really looking forward to getting this done. And for those who are listening to us, make sure you find Thomas through his business on Instagram, and we will make sure we attach all the links to where you can find him. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us at the Black Side Show at episode 13. Until we see you guys again.